Today we are going to look at appraisal of evidence, and what is this all about? Primarily, we are looking at the sources of evidence, and we are looking at, okay, for all this evidence that we are getting from different sources, how can we evaluate and decide that this evidence is credible? That's what we are going to look at. So evidence-based practice relies on evidence that is credible, that evidence that has been generated through transparent, credible procedures or academically sound procedures, and produced with integrity, and therefore what we get is quality evidence. We need quality evidence. This quality evidence comes from research that has been conducted in an ethical manner, in a transparent manner, in a way that it can be reproduced. Okay, now, if we have good quality evidence, then it means that we can apply it in the care of patients or in deciding which interventions we can carry out at population level, and then have better health outcomes at the population level or even at individual patient level. Okay, so there are many questions that we have to ask ourselves in deciding whether the evidence is what we can apply or not. The simple major question is, how is that evidence produced and why? Okay, how is that evidence produced? What was the process of producing the evidence? And then the next question would be, who produced the evidence and why? So these are basically very important questions. Okay, so this evidence comes from primary or secondary sources. We study that primary sources, where we are talking about research articles or empirical research articles, or basically empirical research. When we talk about empirical research, we're basically talking about someone who has gone out there and measured a particular phenomena and then analyze the data and come up with conclusions. That is empirical research, and that is primary data. Also, primary data or primary sources, we are talking about someone who has really collected the data themselves and then present it in a research report. So usually we say this is the most credible data you can ever get, because someone really went and collected that data firsthand. And it is not about someone who interprets the data. Now, we have what we term as systematic reviews. Systematic reviews is when you have someone looking at these research articles, different research articles, and then coming out with a report of the evidence that is coming there. Now, that systematic review is actually what we term as secondary sources, because the person is interpreting the results that have been produced by the different articles. So usually we say that systematic reviews are secondary. Okay, so with secondary sources, it is not about someone has not gone to collect the data themselves. The researcher has not gone to collect the data. They are reporting on data that has been collected by someone else. So usually people's opinions, interpretations, and the summaries of the evidence that is coming from different researchers, that is usually termed as secondary sources, or you can say that is evidence that is secondary in nature. Okay, so usually we say that the books are usually secondary. So if you go to textbooks, these are secondary sources of information. Okay, so usually, and I need to mention this, when you read the introduction of any research, the introduction section of any research is based on other people's work. Okay, so when you go into the person's introduction, they are referring to other people's work. Okay, and if you want to really do the right thing, if they are saying that If someone writes, maternal mortality in South Sudan is very high, and then the reference they put there is UNFPA, WHO, and other entities, and that is the reference 2025. That's the reference that they have put. So when you are referencing that work, you are supposed to go to this document, the one for WHO, UNFP, and the other agencies. Actually, I think it is usually termed as interagency something. So you go to that very article and read it, and then you reference that very article, the one for WHO. You don't reference this article that has cited this UNFPA. Okay, let me just simplify it. If you have read a research article where in its introduction it talks about the definition of health according to WHO, so they put WHO 1948. That is, I think that is the date that definition was adopted by WHO. So when you reference that work, you don't reference that article that has talked about that definition. You go to that WHO document that talks about the definition and you reference it. Okay? It says it's very important for you to know it. Okay? It's very important for you to know it. So even in the literature review, still the same thing, because the person most likely is referencing articles that he did not do. Okay, he did not carry out the research himself. That it is also possible in the literature review still to have to reference to research that someone has done. If I do research and I publish it, and then I write literature review, including some of the work that I have done before, I still need to reference it, even if I'm the one writing. Actually, if you don't reference it, that is plagiarism. So most of us get information, avoid Google, especially if you are writing for academic purposes. But of course, sometimes you may find yourself going to websites. And the most easier way to go to a website is you type in Google and you can go to that website. Or if you know the website themselves, the website itself, you just enter the website and go directly to that website. Now, when you see work on the website, you need to be able to discern what is good and what is not good. Okay, you need to know what information is good on a particular website and which one is not good on a particular website. Usually, as a general rule, there are websites that are credible. Okay, WHO, that's credible. Ministry of Health of any country, that is credible. CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Those are, if you go to those websites, those are credible. Okay, so you can get information from there. Now, if you go to a website that you actually it is not owned by a known international agency, a known national organization, a known government agency, if they don't fall into those categories, then you need to check for many things. What other things do you check for? One is that this information that is written on this website, is it transparent? Do they describe the things that they did to reach to particular conclusions? Yes or no? Where else have they actually been cited? That is an issue to do with the work. You see, when you do research for other people in the research community. And we have what we term as gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is basically, I think, an English word that you don't get into any community anyhow. People need to screen you first before you go into that community. Now, it's the same thing with research. You don't write your research that is poor in quality or weak research, and then you think that it will be accepted into the research community. No. So we have gatekeepers. Who are those gatekeepers? These ones are the reviewers, people who review research work and decide whether to publish or even reject it. And of course, when they reject your work, you have lost time, you have lost resources, and you have not contributed meaningfully. You have actually, one of the things that you have actually done is that you disturb the participants to participate in your research. It's low quality research. So you have disturbed, it's not ethical. It's not ethical to engage in research that is not good, because you have disturbed the participants in one way or the other. Okay, so you need to look at this website. The content which goes there is reviewed by who? Okay, what is the process of making sure that this content goes to that website? Okay, you need to be what you term as cyber skeptic. When you are on the internet, don't just fall for anything. Okay, and it could be very embarrassing for you who is a health worker to share anything on social media, for example, about a very unique cure for a particular disease. We have a problem, and that problem is, yes, we have our native or herbs, native medicine that can actually cure some of these conditions. But the process of proving that these herbs actually cure this medicine, we have not followed it, and that process is what we term as the scientific process or the scientific approach. If we follow that process and prove that indeed the drug works, I mean the herbal medicine works, then you as a health worker, you can be able to share that information. This one can cure this, but if you don't have proof, it becomes a little unethical that you share such content when you don't have what we call empirical evidence. Okay, so it's very often that I see people with medical backgrounds selling different medicinal products. You can have one medicinal product curing over 20 conditions, but sincerely, you as a health worker, this single medicine has how many mechanisms of action for it to be able to cure 20 conditions? So you need to be very skeptical about some claims. And then if the article is claiming to be research-based, it is based on researches that other people have done, then you need to go to those referenced articles, and then you go and check them out and see whether they are actually credible or not. Sometimes it is about someone else saying that this thing worked for me. When someone said this thing worked for me, and then for you believe it, you are not a scientist. You are not. And then check whether the information is updated or basically outdated. So don't rush. Don't rush. Your credibility will actually go down if you cite things that are not very credible and acceptable. Okay, examine bias. Some of the things that you see on the websites are about promoting certain products. Now, this is also very common. You see weight gain and weight loss. These are the things that are disturbing many people because of a transition that we're experiencing in urbanization associated with nutrition transition and epidemiological transitions. Now, what is happening with this? That many people want to lose weight very fast. So they look for these weight loss pills, magic pills and magic juices. So you can find a celebrity who is marketing this very nice juice that can reduce your weight within a week. Now, you may not, scientifically that is very hard, but it is also, there are also other, it's not to say that You cannot have things, for example, that can suppress appetite. Because if you can suppress appetite, it means you're going to eat less and you're going to control the weight gain, right? So they can work. Some of these medicines can work. But the efficacy, okay, how soon can they work? It's also another thing that is questionable. So sometimes, especially in this area, the evidence is not conclusive. But when someone is marketing to you these products, they are like selling to you magic bullets that the thing is going to work. You're going to lose weight in 1 month and things like that. So now, usually what is behind that motivation is financial gain. That they want to sell this product to you and then they get that financial reward. And then we have issues to do with whether this website is respecting privacy, and it is not collecting information from you and it is storing it unethically. So that's another problem that you can always see with websites. Now, when it comes to news, one, in our context, we are not good at sharing research work on our radio stations and our TV, and the programming of TV and radio in our context here is very poor. I'm not a good listener to radio, but every time I get a chance and listen to radio, for example, in a car, you hear music, and then a little bit of news, and that's all. But if you listen to BBC, for example, I think it is very difficult to spend a full day without hearing anything to do with the research. It's very difficult. Okay, so the newspapers, the radio stations, the TV stations are good points of disseminating research. But they have a problem, is that some of them do not employ specialists. Okay, so someone produces research. They have a dissemination workshop. A journalist attends, and then the journalists get their own interpretation of the research findings, and then they go with that. And the editor, the person who reviewed this news article, may not also be a competent specialist or an expert in that area, and will approve the work for publication or for broadcasting. That's where a problem start to emanate, that the research findings or conclusions get distorted. You have had, for example, research that is related to HIV and AIDS, and very many news articles, definitely around the world, have announced not once, not twice, that the cure for HIV is now available. That's what the headline says. But when you read the article, for example, I think the latest breakthrough in terms of HIV is when there was a report of findings where you can take, they call it HIV vaccine, and it can protect you from HIV for 6 months. Okay? That is not a cure. That's not a cure. If you take that injection, it is going to protect you from contracting HIV for 6 months. But the newspapers will say the cure for HIV has been found. That's wrong. Okay, that's wrong. So there's that kind of distortion. So when you're reading any news article, be keen to look for the primary research article. So for example, in that case, you need to go to the health agency that released or that conducted that clinical trial to come out with that injection that prevents you from contracting HIV. Okay? And then often, if you listen, again, if you compare BBC, Al Jazeera, and other news agencies, that When you have this high impact research, they will interview the person, and the person will give the background to the research and what the conclusions mean. Or they will get another expert who did not conduct that research and interpret this and dissect this for the larger audience. That's a good practice. But for us here, we take ourselves to be the experts. That's a problem. So be careful with the press and the news agencies.